Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ling-ling, ding-a-ling-ling. Well, I had a set of bells. Unfortunately, my dearest and fairest gave them away to our granddaughter. So you'll have to put up with that. Ho, ho, ho. Hi, Santa. Gee, Santa, you don't have many presents on your sleigh. Unfortunately, I have an ending of a cold, and I can't really get up to those high levels of notes I need. You're absolutely right, little boy. What's your name? Jimmy Frank. That name sounds very familiar. Let me check my list. That's right. Are you related to Barney Frank? He's my uncle. Your uncle? Unfortunately, I suspect this isn't going to go well for little Jimmy. What's wrong, Santa? He's the one who's causing my reindeer to work so hard. In fact, Rudolph's red nose has gone out because he doesn't have enough energy. Why is that, Santa? I have a very big load of coal that's so heavy that I wasn't able to take my regular load of presents. Who's getting all that coal? Since you asked, I have to tell you the truth. I'm delivering it to your uncle, Barney Frank. Will you bring me coal too, Santa? Merry Christmas, Jimmy. Bye, Santa. Bye. Bye, Rudolph. Good to see you again. We have red here on the table. I have a red tie. It's Christmas time. Merry Christmas to everybody. We'll start off with my premise. Let me define citizenship. Tonight we have a program on citizenship. It's a new series. Instead of just plain politics, because politics tend to be jaded, citizenship really explains more of what I try to do here. Of course, tonight the little skit was definitely political. What I'm going to be talking about here could probably be construed in both ways, both citizenship, an example, and also as an example of politics. Anyway, citizenship. This is out of Merriam-Webster's 10th dictionary. It was established in 1611, this definition. And it states, I quote, the quality of individuals' response to membership in a community. So that is what citizenship is. Anyway, hi, I'm Straight Talk. Tonight's another edition of our RCTV Studio series of my program. We're broadcasting live from Reading, Massachusetts. The program is live only this evening. In fact, it's not even this evening. We had a problem with engineer here, and we missed a half an hour ago, so it's not live tonight. But if you want to watch it again, you'll have to watch it on a rerun. My website is called Johnny Straight Talk. In fact, right now I don't see any photos, so are we live? If we're not live, I can't see anything. And I'm not sure if you can hear me. Oh, here we are. We got the signal back again. That's what was an act of God here. Thank you very much. If you want to watch all my old programs, I'm loading more of them every other week or so. And the program, actually the website is Johnny Straight Talk. Spell it correctly and you'll get to johnnystraighttalk.com. So tonight, good government requires good citizenship. I've given you the definition of good citizenship, and the premise for this program is as follows. The best way of describing citizenship is what's happened now in the financial crisis. Now, let me read. Our failure as citizens of all persuasions to take a more active part in our governance has resulted in the greatest financial disaster since the Depression for the USA. In fact, probably ever since our country's inception. This initiated not only the financial crisis in the United States, but also has caused it in Europe. The financial crisis is really the most dramatic because of its widespread nature, and it's involved in both, it has involved both political parties. It's really unfortunate. I'd like to tell you about my premise here, as usual, my motto. You give a man a fish, you fed him for the day. If you give a man or teach a man how to fish, you fed him for a lifetime. And unfortunately, all Democrats, except the one I have here tonight as a guest, would not break the fishing rod of that person who would not be able to fish any longer. He would have to go to, what, the Democrats for more fish, more fish. This is how they buy votes. Anyway, a couple other comments about this program. This event, that is the financial crisis, is not only unprecedented, but even far worse, it's kind of inconceivable with the financial controls that we have in place in these modern times. This could only happen with our representatives in Congress and administration working for themselves together, both. I've not heard anyone say it can't be either Democrats, Republicans, or the combination of two. Not one person has challenged me on that. And it's really not working for themselves. It's really a self-serving in the worst sense of the word. Not one group of our representatives, whether senators, congressional senators, or congressional representatives, has come forward with contrition. Have you heard anyone say, you know, we failed as a body? I haven't. Please, tell me. Call me up here. The phone number is right there, 781-944-8888. Of course, it's not for tonight anyway. We don't have a live program. Sorry. I kind of forget that sometimes. But in any case, not one. What they have done, they put their hands on their eyes, they got their ears plugged, and they've got their hands over their mouth. This is what it is, because they're so deep, both parties are so deep, that if once the finger pointing begins, it will just end up being both groups being tainted badly. So they don't want to give you the impression that anything like this has ever happened. Of course, it's happened deeply, and you have to be really ignorant to know that this is a very sad situation for our country. And the words to express it, you know, I just couldn't find one word. I just have to use them all. Incompetence, laxness, neglect, complicit, collusion, immoral, criminal, unethical, malfeasance, falseness, and extensive lying by accountants and financial people in administrative positions, especially in the private sector, and also some in the government. It's just colossal. It is so deep that it's not easy, regardless what kind of citizenship we have today, to really change this around. It's going to take a while, and unfortunately, it's a mistrust of government that we should have. One mention about both parties. Both parties are up their eyeballs on this, no question about it. We have the Community Investment Act, which helped to really initiate this entire subprime crisis that we've had. Many mortgages were given, and this was encouraged by not only Jimmy Carter. We had the Community Investment Act, then we have Clinton, then we have Bush himself is involved up to his eyeballs in encouraging mortgages for people who could not afford those mortgages. They were giving them rates that I wish they called me up. You know, I would be dying to get a subprime loan, but I never did have that opportunity. They gave loans and mortgages to people who did not have jobs in some cases, who could not afford those loans, and this is the way they wanted to generate higher percentage of homeowners in the United States. Well, when this happened, we got the financial crisis. And in the last 2 years, granted that Bush was involved in the last, from 2000 to 2006, we had the Banking Committee, which was run by the Democrats. They took over the Congress in 2006. And Barney Frank was obviously a Democrat, and other Democrats who were in control in the Banking Committee during the last 2 years of George Bush's reign. It may be kind of a wrong word to use, but reign, I think it's a good one. As I am a Constitution Party member. I was once a liberal for about 30, 40 years, actually 40 years, and I became a Republican for a while, and then I realized with Ross Perot this was the only way to get out of this problem. And the situation we're in today would have been not where it is if we had voted for Ross Perot. Ross Perot was going to clean house. Yeah, well, a lot of people would have gone down, but this is what you need when you have a situation that has now exploded to a point where Ross Perot, I don't know where he is today. Unfortunately, this would be easy for any third party to come in, but it's so difficult to get in as a third party member. Anyway, the committee, regulates, that is the banking committee, regulates the banking industry and Freddie and Fannie mortgage companies and other activities. Since 2003, Barney Frank, who was a very great, strong advocate for home ownership, made this quote, or I quote what he said, "We'll have to roll the dice," close quote, referring to the danger of having so many subprime loans. Well, this quote is in the Atlantic magazine, which is left of center. It was in a journal on December 13th, 2011, and the article was called, "Hey, Barney Frank, the government did cause a housing crisis." Well, anyway, that created the October surprise that you'll hear said many times during national elections. In this case here was in 2008 when Bush was, John McCain was running against Obama, and the October surprise pushed the election in the direction of Obama because he was kind of losing at that point. The polls had McCain and Palin ahead of Obama and Mr. Biden. So there was a case. Could anyone have planned something so delicately beautiful to cause one party to lose the election? No one's written a book about that, but I feel a lot has to do with what Barney Frank made for decisions in the last 2 years. No red flag was raised to warn the public. He was self-interested. And that's why I had the little skit to begin with. And hopefully you enjoyed that. Well, anyway, tonight I have a gentleman, a conservative first like I am. He's associated with the Democratic Party. I happen to be a Constitution Party member. His name is Tom Ryan, a fellow Ready Knight. He's been here in this town for how many years, Tom?
Oh, about 40. Hold on a second.
Oh, wait.
Okay. I guess I'm in
You
the
got the right,
place.
okay.
Okay. You know, John, you're talking about the nasty things all these people are with lax and so forth and so on. You left out bad breath.
Oh, very good.
You know, as far as the subprime mortgages are concerned, you can't blame totally the banking and the bankers. I think personal responsibility should have come into play.
No question about
The
it.
people that took out
Yeah.
these loans.
But you do admit that most of the people, even like myself, it was tough to get loans at
Oh,
the
yeah,
time.
sure, you jump
And
on anything.
you jump on anything.
Sounds
So
good.
there is a serious complicitness because of the fact that some didn't have jobs. They didn't even check their background. The banks just kind of said, look it, we got the government behind us. They'll take care of it. And that's what Fannie and Freddie were doing, taking up all those mortgages that were going to fail, and many of them were, and caused $1 trillion loss there in those two groups.
I like that word trillion. We used to talk about billions being the deficit, billions. Now it's trillions.
Trillion, 1,000 billion. Can you
Yeah.
imagine?
Do you know what $1 trillion would mean to the American people? What's the population of America? 350 million?
It's about 320, 310,
320, so
310, yeah.
$1 trillion represents about $30,000 per person.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Well, of course that's right. I just said
Sure.
so.
I've always deferred to you, sir,
Go ahead.
as a senior mentor.
Oh, go ahead.
So anyway, there was also an article in the USA Today, actually the 20th, and the title of the article was Poll, Americans Don't Like What They See in 2012 Race. Very interesting. By the way, the USA Today is left of center. They voted for Obama, no question. They also approved of his Obamacare. But they have excellent opposite opinions in the paper, much better than what the Globe has. The Globe has one, Mr. Jacoby, and that's it. Anyway, I've been impressed with the Globe recently, even though I don't read it. I read it, but I never buy it. Never buy it, never go online. I want to read a couple comments. Why the Americans don't like it. In fact, as part of this poll, it says Congress at lowest approval rating. They have an approval rating. This is a Gallup poll of 11% approval. And disapproval is about 86%. And here's a couple comments from this article. By wide margins, those surveyed say the election process isn't working, and the candidates aren't coming up with good ideas to solve the nation's problems. Well, you know, who's the problem? The problem is the citizens themselves. they're looking for a savior. You know, Christ came 2,000 years ago, and he's not here today, except in the hearts and minds in the Catholics and Christians. And this is the kind of thing you need. You need people who are going to respond. Remember I said you have to respond to the obligations, responsibilities of a citizen. And now they're looking for a savior. Come, save me. You know, this is what they're looking for. Well, it's not going to happen. It could happen. I'm not saying completely out, but it's a possibility. Anyway, another gentleman. We're looking at the politics of backlash. This is a gentleman called Lawrence Jacobs from the Center for the Study of Politics and Governance at the University of Minnesota. I quote, "Americans see a political process that is out of touch and paralyzed in the face of crushing economic conditions and fear about the future. It's as if the country is on the Titanic." It's a great analogy. "And it's going down, and you've got Congress and the presidential field playing the violins. Yes, let's have the next tune." Of course, another analogy was it's just like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. I always like that one. I use that myself. But, you know, here are people, all of a sudden they wake up, they're hurting. They're really hurting. And the only time you really get good change is when you really go down in the dumps. And let's look at seniors like ourselves, Tom. You've got seniors who are trying to retire, right? So all of a sudden they got their nest egg, or at least their house was, and now it's about 20, maybe 30%, or they can't even sell their house below market value. This was the money they were going to retire with. You think they like what's going on? Well, they're hurting. They're hurting. Then you got retired people in terms of income. They don't have enough. They have to work longer. Now, my case is one of them. You know, I should have retired 5 years ago. I didn't retire because I had the financial crisis, and I had most of my money is coming from my retirement is coming out of the business when I sell it. So there you have a situation where, again, the people are going to wake up. The young people are going to pay for this. We're $15 trillion in debt. What do you think about that, Tom?
Well, multiply by 30,000.
30,000.
Okay, John, now, how are you going to solve the problem?
How are we going to solve the problem?
I
I was
just
asked
asked
that
you that.
question. I know. How are we going to solve the problem? I was asked that question tonight at Russell Farms. A gentleman there, I won't mention his name, he may come on the program sometime because he was connected with the Pat Buchanan campaign a number of years ago in Ross Perot's group called Reform Party, which I supported highly. And he asked the same question, and really I said, you know, how do you get 310 million people working together to understand they're reading the papers, taking part in citizenship, which is looking as being a responsible citizen? We're in tough times. You educate yourself. Because the people that are in government right now are really self-serving. You look at what they're trying to do. Recently, they found out they were doing some insider trading on the stock market, where they have an opportunity to get tips from the people they work with, the legislation, whatever it is. And now they're going to file legislation to eliminate insider trading. What's been happening? What's been happening for the last 10, 20, 30 years? Is there any ethical reasons they should comply with the same regulations that we comply with? We don't have the opportunity as citizens to have insider trading. I was telling Tom, you know, these guys leave their position as millionaires. They come in one way and they come out another way. So how do you get to these people? Well, he came up with one thought, was term limits. Term limits would help. It would help to get a turnover where you don't have the connections developed between each other. What do you think of term limits?
Actually, you do have term limits in a way you can vote the guys out.
You're right. Unfortunately, that presumes that you have an educated populace, because I'm sure.
I don't like the word educated populace. People say we have this on a local level. If a measure comes up, say before a town meeting, well, we'll have to educate the people. Well, that assumes that people aren't educated. So I disagree with the idea we needed education. What people have to do is get involved. Okay, right down at the ground level. Now you can call, say, town meeting, either basic democracy or government at its lowest level, one or the other, okay? But that's how people get involved. Get involved. In town, we have Democratic Town Committee, Republican Town Committee, and what do? they meet every spring, something like that, and choose
Right, yes.
delegates to the state convention. And people, oh, I don't get involved in that. The delegates at the state convention, they pick delegates to the national convention, and that's how you get involved, at the grassroots.
Right, I agree with this education. You don't have to have even a high school education to be able, in some cases you got to be able to read, obviously. But reading and taking part in the process at any level is better than nothing. And then, of course, you have high school graduates, then you have community college graduates, you have all of that education. But I know some of these people, college graduates, they never read a paper. I have them in my company. I have 1 or 2 people who don't read the paper. But they are conservative, so I forgive them.
How much time do we have? Are we on for a half hour or an hour?
Yes, a half an hour.
Half hour,
Yeah.
okay. Just
So,
curious
in
about
fact, I
that.
didn't take the time because we didn't start exactly on a minute, but we're going to be given a 10-minute signal, hopefully. Does anybody can hear me? No, they can't hear. It's not cool. Oh, my goodness. This is amateur. What can I tell you? You know, I don't have to pay anybody. Well, I do pay a little bit, but I don't get paid, and the other people associated with the program usually don't. But
Okay,
so anyway, go ahead.
Okay, good. No, getting back to like the basics. How do you get involved? Yeah, town meeting in Reading. Now, Peter Heckenblecker, the town manager, went last night, Tuesday night, at the selectmen's meeting, bemoaned the fact that not too many people are running for town meeting. Now, here you have a chance to vote the budget, vote any other measure that comes before the assembly. You have a chance to elect selectmen, every office. And how many people run unopposed? And they shouldn't, except when I run, I don't run any offices. I mean, that's, you do, and I think of 192 members of town meeting, at the last town meeting, they had to adjourn sine die at the end because they didn't have a quorum. And a quorum of town meeting, 192, is one more than half. That's what, now you had to have 97. They had something like 94. And the minute you don't have a quorum, business has to end. You have to adjourn. The only thing you can do when you do not have a quorum is to adjourn or set the time for the next meeting. Of course, the sine die means it was all over at the time. So here you have a chance to get involved. And John, my vote doesn't count.
You hear that so many times. Yeah.
What is one vote going to do, huh?
Well, let me give an example.
Go ahead. Give me an example, John.
Where it does make a difference. I ran for school committee in 2001 and won by 10 votes out of 3,000. So 1 vote didn't make that much difference, but 10 votes made a difference between whether I won or lost.
The meals tax passed by town meeting. It required a 2/3 majority. 1 vote would have defeated it. 1 vote the other way would have defeated it. The first motion I ever made on town meeting floor was like 100 years ago, back in 1972, something like that. And at the time, they were buying a new ambulance. And the old one we had was a Cadillac. And I suggested, well, why not buy a Chevy? Because they're made by the same company. They wanted to buy an $18,000 Cadillac versus the Chevy. Well, the argument was, people want to ride in the Cadillac. It might be the last time. And you want them to ride in the Chevy, which is a truck chassis. So it was debated for 2 hours, a Saturday afternoon. That's when we had meetings on Saturday. And it lost 61-60.
Wow, 1 vote again.
I went outside for coffee break, and a woman came out and said, "Mr. Ryan, that is one of the most marvelous presentations I ever heard at town meeting." I said, "Well, thank you very much." She said, "But I voted against you." So I hit it. 1 vote.
Well, still,
Gone the other way.
it was a credible comment to you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. So what do I do? Turn my tail and go home and say I'm never going to get involved again?
Right, no.
You win some, you lose some. Classic example of the 1 vote. This won't take too long. You go back to the presidential election of 1876. Tilden, the Democrat, got the majority of the popular vote, over 250,000 votes more than Rutherford B. Hayes. But he fell short of the electoral vote by 1 vote, 164 votes. So it was deadlocked. They went into the Congress. They had a big deal into Congress and went. They were deadlocked. And there were 4 states that were involved in electoral votes. So they formed a commission in 1877, 15-member commission. The 15 voted unanimously to give the electoral votes of Oregon, and I believe it's South Carolina, to Tilden. The other 2 states, Louisiana and Florida, they gave to Rutherford B. Hayes, 8-7.
Wow.
So he won the presidency of the United States, became, I think, the 19th president by 1 vote. So when people say, my vote doesn't count, believe me, it does.
That's a very good comment you made here. And, you know, back to what you said, what else can we do? Town meeting, obviously in the town of Reading, which has quite a few activist people. The attendance has dropped off. The number of people
Yes.
who are taking part as town meeting members dropped off. Well, you know, these things do make a difference.
Yes,
And
but here's, if I
go
may
ahead.
interject something about getting involved in the town, and especially a town meeting or going before any board, if you have a gripe or a complaint or something, and I think I showed you the article about that I wrote, and it appeared in the Reading Chronicle, who says you have no right to complain if you don't vote.
Right.
If you complain, whether you vote or not.
We only have 5 minutes left, so
Okay.
why don't we call up our friends that we all worked with and worked against?
Okay, just one bit about if you want to get involved, know the laws. If you're going to run for town meeting, get a copy of the bylaws and.
Right, all
everything.
essential tools.
Go ahead.
We're going to call a couple of people here, and
This is not my idea, this is John's.
this is my idea. I always wanted to do it, but Tom knows these people, so he can soften the blow. Oh, boy. This is going to be interesting. Zero 03 11. You're not going to get an answer tonight, here.
Christmas shopping.
Right. Obviously, you know this wasn't pre-planned, that's for sure.
Reach 942-0311. If you leave a message, we'll call you back.
Doesn't even sound like him. Let's try the other one. Oh, goodness.
By the way, it's Christmas, not happy holidays.
Right, we're going to get that through, you know. Jimmy Frank. Santa said, Merry Christmas.
I was talking to a talk show last week explaining that holiday is a combination of 2 words.
Hello?
From,
Hi, is this Doug?
This is his son.
Oh, his son. Oh, I see. Well, glad to talk to you. This is Johnny Straight Talk with Tom Ryan. We're live on my program, cable TV on Channel 9. We're hoping to speak to Elaine, but I guess she's not there.
No, she is not.
Well, wish her a Merry Christmas, and wish you and your family also, and say hello to Doug.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Christmas.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
No, the bit about holidays on the talk show. Holidays is a combination of 2 Old English words, Halig and Dag.
Oh, yes,
Halig
you were
means
mentioning that.
holy,
Yep.
And Dag meaning day. So when people say happy holidays, the irreligious people, they're wishing you happy holy days. So
That's great.
maybe the atheists will come up with something else.
Now, back to the question, you know, how people are really, you know, you only get change when the house falls around you and you really start feeling the pain. And I gave you examples how the elderly have been feeling the pain. The younger people are feeling the pain also because of the fact, you know, you got the occupiers downtown, Boston. We have them around the United States. They're feeling the pain by not able to get a job as fast as they like. But also the pain of looking at the $15 trillion in debt.
And going up.
And going up. We can blame the Republicans as well as the Democrats. The Democrats, though, use buying votes, use to create, you know, all kinds of entitlements, whether it's welfare, whether it's MCAD, Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, any way to redistribute the wealth. And remember Obama talking to Joe Plummer, he said, we're going to distribute the wealth. Yes, we will. And he's doing that with Obamacare.
Well,
with
if
this.
you come to my house and want to redistribute my wealth, I'll exercise my Second Amendment rights.
We know what that means. Anyone who knows anything about the Constitution. Anyway, you know, this is about the best opportunity ever. We have 1 minute left. Best opportunity ever to get people involved with citizenship.